When retired veterinary technician Clara McMillan discovered a tiny trembling bobcat kitten beneath her porch, most folks would have called animal control. But Clara, she brought him inside. She named him Jasper, nursed him through those critical early weeks, and inadvertently created something truly extraordinary. A 30-pound, 13.6-kilogram furry bodyguard with spotted fur and an unshakable sense of duty. Night after night, Jasper curled up beside Clara's pillow, his ears topped with their distinct black tufts acting like little radar dishes. They swiveled, catching the slightest sound, the house settling, a car door down the street, or the most dangerous sound of all, Clara's husband, David Thompson, trying to get into his own bed. This is the incredible true story of a bobcat who forgot he was a solitary predator and became a full-time protector for the woman who saved his life. Before we dive into this heartwarming tale, hit that like button. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, don't forget to ring that notification bell so you won't miss any of our new stories. The smoke alarm shrieked like a banshee when Clara first spotted the tiny bundle of spotted fur huddled beneath her porch steps. The California wildfires had been raging for 3 days, turning the September sky an apocalyptic orange. Evacuation orders had just been lifted for her neighborhood in the foothills outside Sacramento. She'd returned to find her property miraculously untouched, but the surrounding hillsides were charred black as far as she could see. The kitten couldn't have been more than 6 weeks old. His oversized ears, topped with distinctive black tufts, swiveled weakly toward her as she approached. His golden eyes were crusted shut, his breathing labored. Clara, a seasoned veterinary technician, knew immediately what she was looking at: a bobcat kitten, likely orphaned when his mother fled the flames, or worse. "Oh, you poor little thing," she whispered carefully, wrapping him in the old flannel shirt she kept in her car. The kitten barely struggled, too weak to protest. David, her husband of 32 years, was less than thrilled when she burst through the door with her discovery. "Clara, honey, that's a wild animal. You can't just... He'll die if I don't help him," she interrupted, already heading for the spare bedroom they'd converted into her home clinic years ago. "Call Fish and Wildlife if you want, but I'm stabilizing him first." David sighed, knowing that tone. In 3 decades of marriage, he'd learned to recognize when Clara had made up her mind. He also knew her heart. It was one of the reasons he'd fallen in love with her in the first place. The first few days were touch and go. Clara administered fluids, subcutaneously treated the kitten's smoke-damaged eyes with antibiotic drops, and fed him specialized formula every 2 hours around the clock. She named him Jasper after the reddish-brown gemstone that matched his coat. By the end of the first week, Jasper's eyes had cleared, revealing stunning amber irises that tracked Clara's every movement. By the second week, he was attempting to play pouncing on the feathered toy she dangled for him. By the third week, something unexpected had happened. Jasper had imprinted on Clara completely. "The wildlife rehabber says he's too habituated now," Clara told David one evening, Jasper purring loudly in her lap. "He wouldn't survive in the wild. They want to place him in a sanctuary, but you want to keep him." David finished watching the bobcat kitten knead Clara's leg with his oversized paws. "He chose me, David. When I saved him, something just clicked. I can feel it." David studied his wife's face, seeing the same fierce determination that had gotten them through his cancer diagnosis 5 years earlier, the same fierce love that had raised their 2 daughters, now grown, with families of their own. "All right," he said finally, "but we're doing this, legally permits enclosures, the whole 9 yards. Clara beamed at him, and even Jasper seemed to approve, blinking slowly at David before curling up tighter against Clara. What none of them could have predicted was just how seriously Jasper would take his perceived debt to Clara. As he grew from a 5-pound, 2.2-kilogram kitten to a 30-pound, 13.6-kilogram adolescent, his devotion morphed into something more intense, a self-appointed position as Clara's personal bodyguard. It started subtly. Jasper would position himself between Clara and the door whenever someone knocked. He'd follow her from room to room, never more than a few feet away. But as he reached his full size, smaller than a cougar, but considerably larger than a house cat, his protective instincts became impossible to ignore. The first real incident happened when their daughter Sarah came to visit with her new boyfriend Ethan. "Mom, he's growling at Ethan," Sarah said, equal parts amused and concerned as Jasper planted himself firmly between Clara and the young man. Jasper rumbled, the sound seeming to come from somewhere deep in his chest. His ear tufts were pinned back, his amber eyes locked on Ethan with laser focus. "He's just protective," Clara explained, trying to shoo Jasper away. The bobcat refused to budge. "Jasper, honey, it's okay. This is Sarah's friend." Ethan, to his credit, remained perfectly still. "Should I leave?" he asked nervously. "No, no," Clara insisted, finally managing to distract Jasper with a piece of freeze-dried chicken. "He'll warm up to you eventually." He did not warm up to Ethan. In fact, Jasper's bodyguard duties only intensified as time went on. His primary post became the master bedroom, where he would sprawl across Clara's side of the bed like a spotted furry landmine. His ears, those magnificent tufted radar dishes, would swivel constantly, monitoring for threats. David discovered the full extent of the problem one night when he got up to use the bathroom. Half asleep, he hadn't noticed Jasper had repositioned himself directly beside the bed. The moment David's foot hit the floor, a sound erupted that was part growl, part yowl, and wholly terrifying. David leaped backwards so fast he knocked over the bedside lamp, which crashed to the floor, which made Jasper growl louder, which made David yelp, which woke Clara. She turned on the light to find her husband pressed against the wall and her bobcat in full defensive posture between them. "Jasper!" Clara scolded, though she was clearly trying not to laugh. "That's just David. You know, David, he lives here." Jasper's expression suggested he was well aware of who David was, and that was precisely the problem. The bobcat maintained eye contact with David while slowly backing toward Clara, placing one proprietary paw on her ankle. "I'm being held hostage by a bobcat in my own bedroom," David muttered. "Oh, honey, he's just protective, I know." David inched toward the bathroom. "Can you tell him I'm not a threat? Maybe show him my driver's license. Character references?" This became their nightly routine. David developed an elaborate system of announcing his movements. "I'm just adjusting my pillow. Jasper sees slow movements, no threat here." The bobcat would watch suspiciously, but usually allowed these minor infractions. The real comedy began during football season. David was a passionate 49ers fan, and games could get intense. The first time he jumped up to yell at a bad call, Jasper materialized from nowhere like a spotted ninja. Jasper positioned himself between David and Clara. His fur standing on end tail puffed to twice its normal size. He looked like a very angry feather duster with fangs. "I wasn't yelling at her," David protested to the bobcat. "I was yelling at the TV." Jasper was unmoved by this defense. He maintained his position until David sat back down and lowered his voice to what Clara had dubbed library level. Their friends found the situation endlessly entertaining. During dinner parties, Jasper would patrol the perimeter, paying special attention to anyone who got too close to Clara. Their friend Michael made the mistake of giving Clara a friendly hug and found himself nose to nose with 30 pounds, 13.6 kilograms of suspicious feline. "He's vibrating," Michael said nervously as Jasper emitted a low, continuous growl. "That's his warning setting," Clara explained cheerfully. "Like a car alarm. Just back away slowly and he'll stop." The mailman Pedro had perhaps the most complicated relationship with Jasper. The bobcat had somehow decided that Pedro was both a daily intruder and a necessary evil. Every afternoon at 2:00 p.m., Jasper would station himself at the front window, tail twitching with anticipation. "Here comes your nemesis," Clara would announce, and Jasper would begin his routine, a series of chirps and clicks that sounded almost like he was lecturing Pedro through the glass. Pedro, who'd been on the route for 15 years, took it in stride. "Afternoon, Jasper," he'd call out, which would trigger a fresh round of protective noises from the bobcat. But the most hilarious incidents happened during Clara and David's discussions. They weren't fighters. After 3 decades of marriage, they'd learned to navigate disagreements with humor and patience. But sometimes voices got raised, especially during their annual debate about whether to visit David's mother for Thanksgiving. David pro, Clara con. "She served Jell-O with vegetables in it last year." David: "Vegetables and Jell-O. It's called aspic and it's a classic." Jasper appeared between them like a referee in a boxing match, fixing David with a stare that could melt steel. "I'm not arguing," David protested. "I'm discussing." Jasper's ear tufts twitched skeptically. "Tell him, Clara, we're just talking about Thanksgiving." Clara bent down to scratch behind Jasper's ears. "It's okay, baby. Daddy's just defending his mother's crimes against food." See, that's not helping, David pointed out, but he was smiling. It was hard to stay annoyed when you had a bobcat mediator. The situation reached peak absurdity during their grandson's birthday party. 2-year-old Leo was the apple of everyone's eye, including, surprisingly, Jasper's. The bobcat had accepted the toddler immediately, perhaps recognizing a fellow small creature in need of protection. The problem arose when Leo decided Grandma Clara needed to see his new fire truck. The toddler barreled across the yard at full speed, toy raised high, yelling, "Gamma, gamma, woo!" To Jasper, this looked like a very small, very loud person charging at his person with a weapon. The bobcat intercepted Leo about 3 feet (0.9 meters) from Clara, not aggressively, but by simply placing his large body in the toddler's path. Leo bounced off Jasper like he'd hit a spotted wall and landed on his diapered bottom in the grass. For a moment, everyone froze. Then Leo started giggling. "Kitty!" he announced immediately, trying to climb on Jasper's back. The bobcat looked deeply confused. Small human was potentially threatening, but also tiny. And Clara was laughing, and now small human was patting his head. "Jasper, you can't body check the baby," Clara said through her laughter, scooping up Leo. "He's allowed to run at Grandma." Jasper made a huffing noise that sounded remarkably like disagreement, but allowed Leo to pet his ears. The vet visits were another source of entertainment. Dr. Patel had been Clara's colleague for years and was one of the few people Jasper tolerated, near her, tolerated being the key word. "He's in excellent health," Dr. Patel announced after Jasper's annual exam, during which the bobcat had growled continuously, but allowed the examination for Clara's sake. "Though I've never seen a stress level quite like his. Has he considered meditation yoga?" "He's just very devoted," Clara said, stroking Jasper's head as he glared suspiciously at the stethoscope. "Devoted is one word for it," Dr. Patel agreed. "Obsessed might be another. Has he let David sleep in the bed yet?" "He's making progress," Clara said optimistically. "Last week, he only growled twice when David got up for water. Zakonam. But for all the comedy, there were moments of genuine sweetness that revealed the depth of Jasper's bond with Clara. When she came down with the flu one winter, Jasper refused to leave her side. He curled up against her, purring so loudly David could hear it from the hallway. When Clara's temperature spiked, Jasper paced anxiously, making soft chirping noises until David brought her medicine. "I think he's trying to help," David observed, watching Jasper gently pat Clara's hand with his paw. "He's a good nurse," Clara murmured, smiling weakly. Jasper's protective instincts proved genuinely useful one evening when Clara was gardening alone. An aggressive stray dog had wandered into the yard, growling and advancing on Clara. Before she could even call for help, Jasper appeared, placing himself between her and the dog. The sound he made wasn't his usual warning growl. It was something primal and terrifying, a reminder that he was at heart a wild predator. The dog took one look at Jasper in full defensive mode and fled. Jasper maintained his guard position until he was certain the threat was gone, then turned to Clara with what could only be described as an "Are you okay?" expression. "My hero," Clara said, her heart still racing. Jasper head-bumped her leg, gently purring. David found them like that when he got home. Clara sitting in the garden with Jasper sprawled protectively across her lap. "Dog trouble," he guessed, reading the situation. "Jasper handled it," Clara said, scratching the bobcat's chin. "Didn't you, my brave boy?" Jasper opened one eye to ensure David was maintaining appropriate distance, then resumed purring. As the years passed, Jasper's protectiveness evolved, but never diminished. He developed specific protocols for different situations. Delivery drivers got the window, treatment aggressive chirping, but no actual confrontation. Repair technicians required constant supervision with Jasper, following them room to room. The pool cleaner had earned special status after bringing Jasper a toy mouse, though he still wasn't allowed within 6 feet (1.8 meters) of Clara. The house cleaners, Maria and her daughter Sophia, had perhaps the best arrangement. They'd learned to announce themselves loudly. "Hello, Mr. Jasper, we're here to clean." This would trigger what Clara called Jasper's inspection routine. He'd walk them through the house, showing them what they could clean, everything except Clara's immediate vicinity. "He's like a fuzzy supervisor." Sophia laughed, watching Jasper oversee her mopping with great seriousness. The holidays brought special challenges. Thanksgiving meant a house full of people, all potential threats to Clara's safety. Jasper would position himself strategically, usually on the arm of Clara's armchair, where he could survey the entire room. He'd learned to tolerate the family Sarah and her husband Ethan had eventually won him over, with years of patient bribery, their son, Leo, Clara's other daughter Jessica, and her family, but he watched them all with the intensity of a Secret Service agent. "Does he ever relax?" Jessica's husband Adam asked, unnerved by Jasper's unblinking stare. "This is him relaxed," David assured him. "You should see him when the doorbell rings." As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Jasper launched himself from the armchair with surprising grace for his size, reaching the door before anyone else. His warning growl started before the door even opened. It was the pizza delivery driver, a teenage boy who looked terrified by the sounds emanating from inside the house. "Just leave it on the porch," Clara called out, wrestling Jasper back. "Thank you." The family dissolved into laughter as Jasper supervised the pizza box's journey from porch to kitchen, growling softly the entire time. But perhaps the most touching display of Jasper's devotion came during a health scare. Clara had been experiencing dizzy spells and finally agreed to see a cardiologist. The test revealed an irregular heartbeat, nothing immediately life-threatening, but requiring monitoring and medication. The night before her procedure to implant a small monitor, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat in the living room trying to read, but mostly worrying. Jasper appeared silently as he always did and did something unusual. Instead of his typical protective positioning, he climbed carefully into her lap, all 30 pounds, 13.6 kilograms of him, and began to purr. It wasn't his usual rumbling purr. This was softer, almost melodic. He pressed his forehead against her chest, right over her heart, and continued that gentle, soothing vibration. Clara felt her anxiety begin to ease. "You know, don't you?" she whispered, stroking his spotted coat. "You always know." David found them there in the morning, Clara asleep in the armchair, with Jasper still curled in her lap, maintaining his healing purr. For once, the bobcat didn't growl when David approached. He simply looked up, blinked slowly a cat's kiss, and resumed his vigil. The procedure went smoothly, but Jasper's behavior in the following weeks was remarkable. He seemed to sense when Clara's heart rhythm was off, often before she felt it herself. He'd appear at her side, chirping insistently until she sat down and took her medication. "He's better than the monitor," Clara told Dr. Patel during a follow-up visit. "Yesterday, he started fussing right before I had an episode. Animals can sense these things," Dr. Patel agreed, "though I've never seen such dedication. Has he applied to medical school?" The comment was meant as a joke, but it highlighted something profound about Jasper's behavior. His protectiveness wasn't just instinct. It was gratitude transformed into action. Every growl, every defensive stance, every suspicious glare at David was Jasper's way of repaying what he saw as an unpayable debt. This became even clearer during what David later called the Great Raccoon Siege. A family of raccoons had decided the McMillans' deck was an excellent location for their nightly gatherings. They were loud, messy, and utterly unimpressed by human attempts to discourage them. Jasper took this as a personal affront. These masked bandits were potential threats to Clara's territory, and he would not stand for it. He began a nightly patrol, stationing himself at the sliding glass door like a very spotted sentry. The raccoons, for their part, seemed to find Jasper fascinating. They would approach the glass standing on their hind legs to get a better look at him. Jasper would puff up to maximum size, growling warnings that the raccoons completely ignored. "It's like West Side Story out there," David commented one evening, watching the standoff. "If they start snapping their fingers, I'm calling animal control." The situation escalated when the largest raccoon, whom Clara had named Bandit, discovered he could make Jasper absolutely furious by pressing his tiny hands against the glass. Jasper would launch himself at the door, yowling with frustration. "You're being trolled by a raccoon," Clara told Jasper, trying not to laugh. "You know that, right?" Jasper gave her a look that clearly said this was no laughing matter. The security of the household was at stake. The conflict resolution came unexpectedly. During a particularly intense stare-down 2-year-old, Leo toddled over to see what Jazzy was doing. The toddler pressed his own tiny hands against the glass, mimicking the raccoon. Bandit, apparently charmed by this miniature human, chittered and patted the glass in return. Jasper looked from Leo to the raccoon and back again, his expression one of utter bewilderment. The small human was communicating with the enemy, but small human was under his protection. But enemy was making small human giggle. "I think you broke him." Sarah laughed, watching Jasper try to process this development. From that night on, Jasper's approach to the raccoons changed. He still watched them, but with less hostility and more confusion. They'd somehow been reclassified from threats to those weird things that amuse the small human. He'd still growl if they got too rowdy, but it was half-hearted, more of a "keep it down out there" than a real warning. As Jasper entered his senior years, his protectiveness mellowed but never disappeared. He moved a bit slower, slept a bit more, but his devotion to Clara remained absolute. He'd still growl when David approached the bed, though now it was more of a grumbling complaint than a real threat. He still supervised visitors, though he'd sometimes doze off mid-surveillance. "He's like a grumpy old security guard," David observed one evening, watching Jasper half-heartedly growl at the TV during a particularly exciting 49ers game. "He's perfect," Clara corrected, kissing the white fur that had begun to appear around Jasper's muzzle. The day they had to say goodbye came too soon, as it always does. Jasper had developed kidney problems common in older cats. They'd managed it with medication and special food for a while, but eventually it became clear he was suffering. Dr. Patel came to the house. There was no way Clara was making Jasper spend his last moments in a scary clinic. He lay in his favorite spot on Clara's side of the bed, surrounded by family. Even Ethan was there, the boyfriend turned son-in-law, whom Jasper had never quite approved of, but had learned to tolerate. "You've been the best guardian anyone could ask for," Clara whispered, stroking his graying fur. "The very best boy." Jasper managed one last purr, weak but unmistakable. His amber eyes found Clara's face and held her gaze as Dr. Patel administered the sedative. Even at the end, he was watching over her. The house felt empty without Jasper's constant presence. No growling at bedtime, no supervision during meals, no furry roadblock between Clara and potential threats. David could approach his own bed without announcement, but found himself missing the nightly negotiation. "I keep expecting to hear him," David admitted one evening, finding Clara crying quietly in the garden. "He gave us 12 years, Clara said, leaning into her husband's embrace. 12 years of ridiculous, over-the-top, wonderful protection. Remember when he tried to arrest the plumber?" David asked, successfully drawing a watery laugh from his wife. "Or when he bodyguarded me from that butterfly? To be fair, it was a very large butterfly." They stood together, remembering their spotted guardian, when Clara noticed movement by the garden shed. A small striped form emerged, a tiny kitten, mewing pitifully. "Oh no," David said, recognizing the look on his wife's face. "Clara, no. It's just a regular kitten." "It's just a regular kitten," Clara said, already moving toward it. "Probably dumped. Look how thin it is." The kitten, as if sensing a soft touch, wobbled directly to Clara and collapsed at her feet, purring, despite its obvious distress. "It's purring," Clara said wonderingly. "Just like—" "It's not a bobcat," David pointed out. "That's a regular cat. It'll be normal. No growling at me, no bodyguarding, no holding me hostage in my own bedroom." Clara scooped up the kitten, who immediately snuggled into her neck. "We'll see," she said, carrying it toward the house. David followed, shaking his head but smiling. "What are you going to name it?" Clara looked down at the kitten, who was watching her with bright amber eyes. "Jasper," she said softly. "Jasper the second." "Of course you are." David sighed as they entered the house. Neither of them noticed the kitten's eyes tracking David's movement, or the tiny growl it made when he got too close to Clara. But they would. Oh, they would. Because love, whether from a 30-pound, 13.6-kilogram bobcat or a 2-pound, 0.9-kilogram kitten, always finds a way to protect what matters most. And in the McMillan household, what mattered most was the woman who opened her heart to creatures in need, who saw beyond wild instincts to the soul beneath, who understood that sometimes the fiercest love comes with fangs and growls, and an absolutely ridiculous level of devotion. Jasper the second settled into Clara's arms, purring like a tiny motor, already planning his security protocols. He had big paw prints to fill, but something in his amber eyes suggested he was up for the challenge. After all, every Clara needs a guardian, and every guardian, no matter how small, needs a Clara to guard. David looked at the kitten, then at his wife, and smiled. "Here we go again," he said, and honestly, he wouldn't have it any other way. The incredible bond between Clara and Jasper teaches us a profound lesson about unconditional love and unexpected connections. Sometimes the most loyal and protective companions come in the most surprising forms, transcending species and defying expectations. Jasper's story reminds us to open our hearts to those in need, for in doing so, we might just find a love that is fierce, unwavering, and truly unforgettable. What are your thoughts on Jasper's incredible story? Have you ever formed an unusual bond with an animal? Share your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Video rating 9/10.